It was a fantastic evening at City Hall. I will admit I was very worried going into the Christian free speech gathering yesterday just because of what had led up to it. Of course, the targeted attack by Antifa on Christians who were peacefully worshiping and singing and dancing on Capitol Hill over the weekend. The unhinged response to that from politicians in the media that blamed those Christians, despite the fact they had done nothing wrong. And we have something called free speech in this country. So it all felt like it was leading up to a violent confrontation when those Christians decided to take their message to the steps of City Hall to call for Mayor Bruce Harrell to resign. But I will say, when it comes to the Christians, not that this is a surprise, entirely peaceful. And being there, I mean, I don't understand how it could trigger anyone. Look, I get that not everyone is religious. I'm not religious either. I had a great time. I was jamming to the music. I was like, how can these people anger you? And I'll also just say, for the identity obsessed among you, progressives are obsessed with skin color and all these. That was the most diverse crowd I've ever seen at any Seattle protest or gathering ever since I moved here 15 years ago. People of all skin tones, ages, backgrounds. And of course, and it was funny because in comparing it, and I'll talk about the other side in a moment, but they were all like young white people who were like 20 years old. So they were a total monolith. And look, I get it. I mean, I don't know every single person in that crowd last night. I don't know if some of them are right-wing extremists. I don't know if some of them are bigots or anti-LGBTQ, but not an ounce of that. Not an ounce of that was evident. Nobody said anything hateful. Nobody said anything violent. Nobody encouraged violence. Nobody said anything bigoted. Nobody said anything about LGBTQ individuals. In fact, I was probably the only one that mentioned transgender people. And so it's just insane to me, and we'll talk about how the media once again paints that crowd singing and dancing and having a great time, talking about love and compassion. So we'll talk about how the media once again painted them as the enemy. So they're on the steps at City Hall, totally peaceful, doing their thing. And I give a lot of credit to the Seattle Police Department for allowing it to happen in the way it did and really making sure that that group was protected. I think they don't have a choice because they're worried about getting sued. So the city probably told SPD, you will make sure that they are cordoned off and that they can worship peacefully. So you compare that to the unhinged lunatics outside. And it was funny because I've never seen Antifa so dejected. Because I think what happened here, and I talked to a few members of SPD who were in charge of controlling the event, it seems like they put into place some reasonable time and place restrictions, which essentially allowed them to put these fences, these security fences around the area where the Christian group was gathering and control the flow of people in and out, because usually that's a public space and you can't really do that. So I think that they had an exception based on the violence over the weekend, but Antifa was totally relegated to the outside corners, but they're the ones out there being violent. They're the ones out there spewing hate. And I mean, all measure, and we'll get into some of the details, screaming at babies, hurling vulgarities, assaulting people they disagree with, chasing journalists down the street. It couldn't be more night and day. And the idea that anyone with a brain could take the side of the violent extremists outside the event is insane to me. Now, were there peaceful counter-demonstrators? Of course there were. Not every one of them was an unhinged lunatic bent on violence. Some of them stood there peacefully for the entire event, holding their sign, calling the participants fascist, which is stupid. But guess what? I totally think you have a right to do that, as long as you do it peacefully. But you couldn't have a better night and day example of what was happening inside versus what was happening outside. So the big news, of course, that came out during this event yesterday is the White House has directed the FBI to investigate what happened in Seattle over the weekend. A lot of national attention on this right now. Dan Bongino, who's the deputy director of the FBI, posted this during the event. We have asked our team to fully investigate allegations of targeted violence against religious groups at the Seattle concert freedom of religion isn't a suggestion. And actually, as we were there, I was in the crowd in the event where the Christians were worshiping, and Pastor Russell Johnson saw that and announced it to the crowd. Here's how they responded.
The FBI has officially opened an investigation into the city of Seattle.
That's how we win, he says. The crowd was totally stoked about it. So the White House is investigating. I don't know to the extent that they can do something about it. You know, the central issue here, and the issue that Pastor Johnson and the Christians had, and the reason I was there in support of them too, is a free speech concern from the government. Look, crazy people are going to do what crazy people are going to do, but you can't have a heckler's veto situation where now the mayor and now a city councilman, Bob Kettle, who I thought was sane, but now even Councilman Bob Kettle, who's supposed to be one of the more moderates, is saying we shouldn't have allowed them a permit there. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's in the heart of the LGBTQ neighborhood or somewhere else in Seattle. If you're saying you're dictating where someone can engage in free speech as the government based on how angry people will get while they're there, then you're violating their rights. And as Dan Bongino said, he said, freedom of religion isn't a suggestion. And I'm sorry also, but you allow the far left to engage in insane behavior and have for like 20 years, and you never come out and say, hey, maybe it was a mistake to let them do that. No, but it was a mistake to let the Christians have a peaceful concert. And you guys know this. I'm belaboring the point. So 8 people arrested. We watched, Nicole was there, watched many of these arrests go down. The SPD put out this statement, 8 arrests during demonstration at City Hall Tuesday, which SPD called a free speech demonstration, which I was like, okay, better than calling it a right-wing extreme, whatever it is. They said officers arrested 8 people, all for assault. No injuries were reported. And then they just characterized it as 2 opposing groups gather along 4th Avenue. Streets around the dueling demonstrations were shut down for several hours, but reopened just before 8 p.m. And I will, again, SPD did a fantastic job. A fantastic job. And they were not having any nonsense. There was a couple instances where, like Katie Davis-Cord, who's an independent journalist, was chased down the street. SPD immediately sent like 20 cops to go help her come back. And they didn't do that just for journalists. They did that for a couple other individuals as well. So as I mentioned, there were several arrests that took place, all of them involving, according to SPD, assaults by individuals. And these were, you know, it was like there was an area where you could get in if you were you wanted to go actually attend the Christian rally, free speech rally. And that's where these Antifa types were gathering to try to block people, to try to get in the way, to shout and scream. I know a couple people were arrested for assaulting our friend Jonathan Cho, which happens quite a bit, I guess. In fact, it almost looked like though SPD was going to try to arrest Cho because he had swung this sort of like monopod for his camera at one of these guys. But they clearly provoked. They went up there and were in his face, and he's sort of like, please, like, leave me alone. Don't get close to me. Yeah, he showed SPD the video so that they wouldn't arrest him. So those are a few of the arrests that happened. We're waiting to hear about charges, first appearances. Some of those will happen today. So one of the arrests I just want to note happened after our friend Ari was attacked, not Ari Hoffman. Remember, we had on the detransitioner, Ari. We had Ari on Sundays with subscribers, biological male. I met outside the Riley Gaines event at the campus of the University of Washington, who was, has detransitioned and really believes and wants to now raise awareness for the medicalization of children. Because Ari, had all these procedures done, can never undo them, will never be confident or happy in his body ever again. So I knew Ari was going to show up here and talk about autogonophilia, this idea that some of these men transition to be women because it's sort of a sexual thing for them. So Ari's going around, peacefully, but saying things that the trans activists don't like. I mean, the crazy thing about this, before I play the video of Ari being assaulted, you have these people who are preaching love and tolerance, and they want you to accept them because they feel like their gender is fluid, right? And that's like something to celebrate and accept. And yes, but if you change your gender back, then you're a hateful bigot and you're the enemy. Here's the moment Ari was pushed up against a wall and attacked.
Oh,
I want to find this guy here, by the way, in the dark gray, protecting him. And then look at SPD. Hell yeah, SPD. Hell yes, SPD. And then arrested one of the individuals who was accused of assaulting Ari. Hell yes, SPD, that's what I'm saying. They'd go in there and be like, absolutely not. Like, we're not going to just sit back and watch you assault this person. So surrounded Ari. And we did check on Ari, and Ari, we were hanging around, and I know Nicole was for most of the evening, and Ari was like, okay, I'm all right. Just insane. Now, here's the craziest thing that happened that, for me, it sets up the, like, you need to choose a side. You need to choose a side. So there was a point where the Antifa types and the Trantifa types were getting too aggressive at the entry, where you could go into the peaceful free speech rally. And so cops had sort of blocked off the area, but then those counter protesters came and blocked the path. And there was this family with 3 children, 2 toddlers and a little baby, that was trying to get down in that area to get into the worship rally. And these Antifa jackasses, which I can say, were blocking them and like screaming at this mother as she was holding her little baby. Note the black woman there in the car. I'm going to talk about her in a moment. Who does this? It's a baby. Who does that? Who surrounds a mom with a baby? It's just disgusting. Again, I'm going to talk more about that woman, the black woman with the braids and the colorful outfit in a second. So this crowd of horrible human beings will not let this mom and her baby, and then her husband's behind her with 2 toddlers, won't let them through. Get them out of here, turn around, go elsewhere, right? So police have to literally come in and rescue these children. Here's the video. So you see in the background, if you look close, SP grabbing one of the kids, one of the boys, right there. Listen. Listen to their chant. Boys are terrified, absolutely terrified. So you hear what they were chanting? F your kids. F your kids. F your kids. And did you hear what the father was saying back to them? Jesus loves you. Guess which side the politicians and the media took? The side of the people chanting F your kids. Guess which side the media vilified last night? The side with the guy saying Jesus loves you to people who are screaming at his children and his baby. It's wild stuff. I mentioned, and I just want to note, that black woman in that video her name is Erica Williams, characterizes herself as a faith leader. She was caught on camera assaulting people. She was screaming at me, which actually I was kind of complimented by it. She said it looks like I have cheek fillers and a weave. And I thought, no, baby, I don't. But then I saw that video and she's saying, get these babies out of here, but she won't move. She won't move. So she's blocking the path of a mother with children and calls herself a faith leader. Gotcha. You know, probably similar to the faith leaders that Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is now trotting out there in his own defense. Can we skip ahead to that, Nicole? So this morning, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, feeling all this pressure, he puts out these statements from prominent Seattle Christian and faith leaders, like a dozen of them, about, oh my gosh, we stand with Mayor Harrell, who spends every day advancing the shared values of love, integrity, and unity. Did you see love, integrity, and unity by the left last night? No, the only love, integrity, and unity you saw is from the Christians that the mayor is vilifying. How dare any Christian pastor come to the mayor's defense. How disgusting is that? How disgusting is that? You have faith leaders who are, this is because they're more concerned. Their politics comes before their values and their religion. Their politics comes first. So if they can vilify the right, people who did nothing wrong, then they're going to do that, even if it means undermining morality and the religion they say they stand for. The mayor, that's desperate. So it's like, oh, don't attack me because I'm the mayor. I'm the city's first biracial and second black mayor, so don't attack me because that's racist. And when that didn't work and when that didn't stick, well, don't attack me because look at all these faith leaders who are sticking up for me. I'm not a bad person after all. Absolutely nuts. So I mentioned which side the media took last night. They didn't learn any lessons over the weekend. They didn't learn any lessons at all. So we already called out the Seattle Times headline from the weekend's rally. Just a couple that I want to show you. So the one over the weekend that was bad, 23 arrests at heated fascist family values protest in Seattle. So that was the one we already criticized them for a couple reasons. Who called them fascists and why would you put that in a headline? And then it doesn't specify who was arrested. So you'll probably think, oh, some fascists, right? Wingers were arrested. So literally on stage, Pastor Russell Johnson is actively calling out the Seattle Times for that headline. When the Seattle Times starts putting out more headlines that are just as bad. Free speech law shielded Seattle anti-LGBTQ plus rally. FBI looks into protest. So read that. First of all, what did they say? Not a word was uttered yesterday from this group that was anti-LGBTQ. Now they're pro-traditional family values, but they didn't utter one word of hate or vitriol at all towards gay people. Not at all. In fact, there was one pastor who spoke who said his moms are lesbians. His mom's a lesbian. And talked about how much he loves her. And then also FBI looks into protests. Which protests, the Seattle Times? Which protest are they looking into? Can you go back to that, Nicole? This is the other one they put out during the event. After 23 arrests at an extreme right-wing Christian rally Saturday in Seattle, at least 4 more protesters were detained Tuesday at City Hall. Which protesters, Seattle Times? Not the Christians. And I love how they use it as a quote, extreme right wing, which was Mayor Harrell's characterization, because they want to call them extreme right wing, but they want to be able to put it in quotes to be safe. How nuts is that? The Seattle Times has no shame. And if you dig deeper, lest you think, oh, just a catchy headline. No, their reporting was just as bad. Here's an article they put out at the end of the evening. 8 more arrests at dueling protests, this time at Seattle City Hall. In here, again, tell me one thing. They label them all these things as they won't even call them like Christians. It's just far-right activists. Literally, look into far-right activists enmeshed with local church groups stand at odds with a slate of protesters pushing back against the Christian nationalist anti-LGBTQ message. How many buzzwords against the right can you fit into one sentence? Far-right activists enmeshed with local church groups? Christian nationalists, anti-LGBTQ, sue them. First of all, let me just say, everyone there and the groups there should sue the Seattle Times because they have no proof of what they're saying. You know what I saw? I think it was a Como article saying that the group that held the event over the weekend espouses pro-life messages. Yeah, it's a Christian group. They're pro-life. That doesn't make them a hate group. They believe in traditional family values. That doesn't make them a hate group. It doesn't make them extreme right-wing or Christian nationalists. And of course, they point out that Matt Shea was at the event over the weekend, a disgraced former state lawmaker who, by the way, was ousted by members of both parties. And yeah, I would characterize Matt Shea as extreme right-wing, but it wasn't his event. He's one person who showed up, and he's no further to the right than these Antifa lunatics are to the left. Yet they get a free pass. Are they being characterized, are the counter-protesters being characterized as extreme left-wing? No, of course not. Absolutely insane. I mean, go read the Times thing for yourself. But yeah, they characterize pro-LGBTQ protesters outside. Okay, they were like Antifa terrorists. Were there some pro-LGBTQ protesters outside? Of course, I already said that. If I can use nuance, why can't the Seattle Times? So they made sure to say, and the mayor said that, oh, Antifa infiltrated over the weekend, this pro-LGBTQ group. And I think that's true. I think that there were absolutely peaceful pro-LGBTQ people over the weekend. You see how I can use that nuance? And I can separate them from one another? But for the media and the mayor, man, Matt Shea shows up in a group of 1,000 and now we're all right-wing domestic extremist Christian nationals. These people are unbelievable.
I also like how they mentioned that there was chanting of SPD, which partially you started, right?
Well, no, they were chanting for SPD. And I was like, and then I spoke and they did it again. I was like, oh, and what, is that a bad thing?
Right. But then look at the picture that they used with this guy. Oh, I have my hands up. And the cops look like they're going after him for no reason or something. They have to make cops look bad too in the picture.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Gosh. And then first of all, also, they lie here in this sentence. It says, in a speech, Pastor Russell Johnson of the Pursuit Northwest non-denominational church praised Seattle police and said the department had been wonderful to work with, wearing what appeared to be a red Make America Great Again hat. He led the crowd in a chant of SPD, SPD. So they're trying to like tie SPD to, oh, SPD loves the MAGA Trumpers. That's not what his hat said.
Nope.
He wore the hat in an interview on this show yesterday and wore it again. And by the way, there were a bunch of different versions of like red hats. I'm trying to remember exactly what it said.
Make prayer great again.
Make prayer
great again.
Make prayer great again. So at the very least, that should be a retraction. It's make prayer great again and then make common sense great again are our red hats. So the Seattle Times didn't even get close enough to like see what hat, and he was on stage a majority of the time. Big bold letters, make prayer great again. Just insane.
And Ari's common sense hat got stolen for a bit and then found in the trash.
Yeah, somebody went and tracked
rescued.
it down. Somebody stole the hat that we gave Ari. Absolutely insane. I just don't even know what to say to the Seattle Times. Disgusting. You should be sued. I would encourage Pastor Johnson to sue them. I would encourage any other Mayday, whatever the thing is, sue them. If you are in the crowd and you're being characterized as a right-wing extremist Christian national, sue them. It's the only thing that's going to change this. I have never seen more disgusting reporting from the Seattle Times, and they weren't alone. They weren't alone. The coverage on the news was unhinged. It was a peaceful rally with Antifa hurting people outside of it, yelling at babies and stuff. F your kids. Unfreaking real. I just can't even believe it. So I don't know what you do with that. I mean, Mayor Harrell obviously has made a political calculation that, you know, it's one of the most unchurched cities in the nation. Offending the conservative Christians isn't going to be a bad thing for him. So he's more than happy to do it. And that's disgusting. And you're emboldening the far left, who hates you anyway, Mayor Harrell, by the way. The far left in the city hates you. They've always hated you. They say horrible things about you. You're not going to win them over. So who are you trying to placate? And instead of just saying, hey, this group has a right to be here. And if, you know, they're just sharing their Christian values. So as long as they don't hurt anybody, they're not doing anything wrong. How hard is that? Nope. Extremist Christian nationals. Absolutely insane. I don't even know what to say. Lawsuits have to happen. Sue, 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 sue.